Hello fellow Blender Maniacs, welcome to part 2 of this tutorial. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure to check out part 1. We just finished modeling and doing all the modeling of the scene. Now in this part, we're going to take a look at adding the materials, environmental lighting, texturing, cloth simulation, physics simulation. We're going to check out the node, we're going to do some node editing. We're going to take a look at a lot of really cool things, and I think you're going to get a lot of value from this. So let's jump right into it. First thing we're going to do is adding in some colors and textures to things. So let's add in some colors to our Lego blocks. You know, that's always fun. Going to layer 2 for the Legos, what I want to do is I want to add in the exact Lego colors. So going to your favorite browser of choice, go to Google and just type in Lego hex color, and the hex color is that 6-digit numerical unlettered digit that gives you the color of things. Go to the website. There's many websites you could go to, but the one I'm going to is official Lego color chart, piron.com. Whatever that means, I have no idea. So piron.com. There's a Lego color chart right here. You can see all the colors. You got a lot of colors to choose from. But what I'm going to do is just go to the top. I'm just going to use these colors here. And the easiest way to do it is just hit print screen or take a screenshot of this page. Open up your favorite photo editing program. For me, Photoshop. And yes, Photoshop 7. Guys, I know I have the newest version of Photoshop. I just have not updated it yet. But, you know, you can use GIMP as well. You could probably even use Paint. We're just going to use the color picker tool here. So it's going to be very simple. Open a new document and then just hit Control V to paste in that screenshot. Going to the eyedropper or the color picker tool right here. Let's first select the dark blue color, or bright blue it's called. Select that color, go to your color palette, and get the hex code, which is this 6-digit combination here. Hit Control C to copy the hex code. Go back into Blender, select your Lego block. And before we do anything, make sure to go from Blender Renderer to Cycles Renderer. For crying out loud, can't they put it default on Cycles Renderer? I mean, who uses Blender Renderer anyways? I bet one of you in the comments is like, I do. Well, if you do, stop doing that. I'm just kidding with you. Do what you want. All right, make sure to go to Cycles Renderer. Go to the Material tab, click on Use Nodes, and then change it from Diffuse to Principled Shader. Now, if you want to check out more of the Principled Shader, go to my Getting Started tutorial series on the site, and I go more in depth on that. But on the base color, click on the base color, go to the hex code, and just hit Control V to paste that in and enter like that. Cool. We're also going to click on the little 7 here to make it a single user. This number means that this material is being used on 7 other objects. However, we want to make it a single user, not a linked user. Clicking the 7 will make it individual, and we're going to rename this to blue. Going back to Photoshop or your program, now let's get the next color. We're going to get the green yellow. Let's go with the bright yellow first. Copy that hex code. Go to Blender. I select this block right here. Make it a single user by clicking the 6, name it yellow, and then go to the base color in the hex code. You guessed it, paste it with Control V. Cool. Now let's see, what color do I want? I want the green color. So with the green color, same thing. I'm going to select this one. This one will be our green. Single user, green. Whoa. I don't know what the apostrophe is there for. Green. And then the last color shall be red. So let's get the red. Or you can make your Lego blocks whatever color you want. You know, I mean, this is your Lego universe. Do what you will. rename this to red. There we go. Boom, and there we have it. We got our Lego colors. If we go to frame 1, change this to rendered view, you could see what we got there. Cool. It looks terrible, but at the same time, it looks awesome. I'm getting nostalgic all over again. And do you know how much this hurts walking on these on a hardwood floor, by the way? It's terrible. All right, for the lid, let's change this material to the yellow or whatever color you want your lid and bucket to be. And I'm going to make this one yellow as well. Cool. Also, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn on my graphics card rendering. So going on to where the camera is, the render options. Right here, you have device, CPU, or GPU. If we enable GPU, you could see it's not selected because if you have a good graphics card, you could go to File, User Preferences, System, and then right here you have Cycles Compute Device. If you click on CUDA or whatever it says here and then enable your graphics card, it will allow for you to render with your graphics card, which is pretty cool. Also, I'm going to go to sampling and change the render samples in the preview to 10 right here. So that now when I go to rendered view right here, it will render first of all with my graphics card, and also it will only calculate 10 samples as you can see from up here, which will make it a little bit faster. All right, cool. Before we go any further, I'm going to go to File, Save As, and save it as a different file. I'm going to save it as Lego Tutorial 2. It's good to save things as different files, not have it all saved on the same file, because let's say your file gets corrupt and you only have one file. That's bad. You want to have multiple files. So always go 1, 2, 3, and etc. as you go along with your scene. All right, next, let us add in some light. Let's select the lamp right here. There we go. Go to the lamp settings, click on use nodes, and we're going to change this to a sunlight. Next, what we're going to do, unless you live in a country or a place where your sun is inside your house, let's bring it outside the house. And this dotted line right here, if we hit R to rotate, this is the direction that the sun will be shining, or kind of like the direction of where it is in the sky, whether it's noon, midday, sunrise, etc. So right there, it's about like a, sunrise, noonish, sort of. Now, I'm also going to position my camera 1 on the numpad to go into front view. If we just position our scene how we want like this, and then hit Control-Alt-0 on the numpad, that will position the camera in that view. Right click the camera and G middle mouse click will allow for you to zoom it in and out. Just gonna position it right here for now. Yeah, just like that. Now if I go to rendered tab, the rendered tab. All right, couple things that you could see. First of all, the scene looks terrible. Second of all, our curtain, the light is not going through the curtain, which is not good. So let's go ahead and do just that for the curtain. We're going to be going into the node editor. This is going to be pretty fun. First thing we want to do, open back up your browser of choice and go to textures.com. Now, textures.com is an awesome website where you could create a free account. I think you get 15 credits every week or every month. I can't remember. But you could download up around like 15 free textures every week or every month. And these are really good textures. So just create a free account on here. I'm surprised if you don't already have it. And then on the front page, just go to Fabric. Go to Patterned Fabric. And the curtain fabric we're going to be using is this one right here. The green and blue fabric curtain right here. Now I already downloaded it, but once you're logged into your account, just click on purchase, click on the small and it will download and save it somewhere. Cool. Going back into Blender. Let me enable full screen mode. Select the curtain. I'm going to hit the T key to go ahead and close this. Bringing my mouse to the bottom left here so that I get the little crosshairs. left click and drag on this corner, and that will split your viewport like so. What we're going to do first is we're going to add a material to this. Click on new. We can rename this to curtain. We should have named our objects too, but you know what, whatever. Curtain. It's good to name stuff, especially when you get further into your scene. We're going to name this curtain. We're going to change this to principal. Actually, we'll just leave it like this because we're going to go in the node editor. What we want to do in the front view, one on the numpad, change this from color. We're going to change it to image texture. And I want to show you quickly. Right here, if we go to the node editor, I'm going to also hit the N key to close that. The node editor is basically like a tree layout of the materials tab, the textures tab, and much more as well. The node editor gives you a lot of control over the compositing, the texturing, the materials, the lighting, a lot of different things. But as you can see right here, we got the diffuse, which we have here, and the material output. If we change this from color to image texture, you can see that it updates right here right away. Now, you could go, a certain distance with using here, but if you want to go even further with your scene, the node editor, you can work some magic in here. What we're going to do is click on open of the texture, find the texture, and it's called textures, fabric patterns. Now, going to the textured viewport shading, clicking here, texture, you can see our texture is not there because we haven't UV unwrapped it. So here, let's switch to UV image editor quickly. Hitting tab to go into edit mode, A to select everything, and U click unwrap. Basically what unwrapping does is it projects your three-dimensional mesh onto the image. Now we can't see the image right here because we just need to go here and select it. But now you can see if I hit G right here to grab these vertices, it's basically projecting this three-dimensional object onto here, like I just said. So here you could scale it up, scale it down if you want it smaller, bigger, rotate it, whatever. And since this image is seamless, it will be perfect. I'm just going to leave it at the default. Hitting tab to go back to object mode, I'm going to change this back to the node editor right there. Now, what we want to do is basically, I'm going to turn this into the rendered viewport shading just so that you could see it in real time. And what we're going to be doing here is quite simple, and it could be daunting at first, but it's pretty simple. And I'll go over it as we go. Left click and drag this over here. By the way, it's the same shortcut keys. If you hit the G key, you could grab this, left click to position it, etc. Let's go ahead and add in a node. Same way we add in objects, Shift A. We're going to add in a color, mix RGB node, and left click and drop it into there. We're going to take the color input node from the texture and put it into the factor setting right here. So now basically it will take these two colors as the color factor of the scene and of our curtain. The first color, I'm just going to go to RGB. We're going to make it white. And then the second color, which will also affect the color of the scene and the color of the curtain. You can see if we change the color of this, it will change the color of the curtain. I'm just going to increase the brightness and make it a kind of yellowish, beigeish color. Like a warm kind of color to it. We're also going to enable clamping right here. All right, next, what we want to do, because right now the light is not going through the curtain. The reason being is because we have a diffuse shader, and diffuse shader is basically just like a color texture or it's also known as albedo or color texture or diffuse. They're all the same. So it's just the image. However, if we add just a translucent or a transparent shader, it will just be see-through and it won't look good. So what we're going to do is hit Shift A. We're going to add a shader we are going to add a translucent shader, not transparent, translucent. We're going to add this one. Take the color from here, bring it to here. We're going to leave the diffuse here. Next, we want to mix these two shaders. So Shift A, add shader, mix shader. Drop this right here in the middle. Bring the diffuse to the bottom. And then the translucent, let's bring it to the top. So right now, you're probably thinking, what in the world just happened? It's actually translucent, but the reason it looks so crazy is because our lamp is set to 100. So right here on the outliner, go to the lamp and change the emission strength to, let's change it to 10. And there we go. And also you can see if we change it down to like 2, we could get that. Let's just change it to 10 for now. Selecting back our curtain. Now you can see that the light is shining, or the light isn't actually shining through, but the curtain is translucent. So it looks, it looks see-through. It looks transparent. This mix shader, what's happening right now is it's basically taking the image texture, it's mixing it and using these as the color values. It's then being translucent and also diffuse, and that is dictated by this mix shader right here, the factor. Right now it's 50% translucent, 50% diffuse because it's at 0.5. If we put it to 0, it's 100% translucent. If we put it to 1, it's 100% diffuse. So I'm just going to put this to like 0.8. So it's 80% diffused, 20% translucent. Of course, the more translucent, the more see-through it is. So 0.8 on that. Next, what I want to do is I want to let light actually shine through because there's not really any light hitting the floor. It looks pretty, bad. Now what we want to do is add a transparent shader. So Shift A, add shader, transparent. And right here, connect the color. Whoop, that didn't work too well. Connect the color right there. And then select the mix shader, Shift D, copy it over. Put the top of this shader right there. And the transparent one, put it right here. And now you can see that it's given it more of a transparent look. And also the light, if you look at the floor right here, there's not really any, beigeish color light going through. But if we put in the transparent shader right here, you could see that now we have a beige hue or light coming in from the curtain onto the floor. So that's really cool. So now it looks a lot better because we got the transparency of it. We got the light actually coming through the curtain, and it looks all good. Now, one last thing to do, and this is just a little bit more technical, but what we're going to do, and I'll explain it right after, we're going to hit Shift A, add in a we're going to add in an input light path. There it is. Light path. And then we're going to hit Shift A, add a converter math node. We're going to change this to greater than. And right here, we're going to take the ray depth, put that into the top value right here. And then copying this math node, Shift D, we're going to change it to add. Take this value, put it into the bottom value. And then we're going to take the is camera ray and put it into the top right there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take this node right here, and we are basically going to, for the factor value of this, it's going to be dictated by this one right here. And there we go. So basically what we did is we're controlling the transparency so that it's not visible to the camera, but it will still make the light come through the curtain and into the room, and also keep the translucency of the curtain's material. And with this value right here, with the with the value right here with the ray depth value, you can actually control how much light comes into the room. So if we change this to, let's say 1, you can see that we have a lot more light right here, and this is looking a whole lot better. And of course, let's see if we put it to 5. So yeah, you could put it to a value that you want to dictate how much light is coming through the curtain. All right, there we go. So that looks really cool. That looks a lot better than what it would have looked like originally. So there's some node compositing for you. Don't worry, you know, it can be overwhelming at first, but it's actually, if you do it one step at a time, you start to learn it and it gets pretty easy. All right, I'm gonna leave this. Actually, I'm gonna switch this to UV image editor, as we're gonna be using that right here, right next. That makes no sense. All right, let's do the floor. So for the floor, we're gonna add in a texture. Going back to textures.com, as you can see, it's my favorite site, or what? We're gonna search for floor. And we're going to add in textures properly. We're not just going to add in an image texture because that looks terrible. The floor texture I'm going to be using is this one right here. And since I already downloaded it, I'm not going to download it. But you're going to download 3 different textures for this texture here. You're going to download the albedo or the diffuse or the color map. You can go ahead and just download it. You're going to download the normal map and the roughness map. Now make sure whatever size you pick the same size for all 3 of them. So once you've downloaded all 3 of those, back into Blender, we are going to select our room, add a new material. We're going to call this first one walls, and change this. Let's just leave it diffuse. Next, add a new material. We're going to name this floor. And hitting tab to go into edit mode, go into face select mode, select the floors, and with the floor material selected, assign it to that material. Cool. Go from diffuse, change it to principled shader. Go to the base color, click on the little dot, and change it to image texture. And go ahead and open your texture. We're going to open the albedo wood floor texture. Hitting 7 to go into top view. Let's go into textured mode just so we could see. And it's just brown right now, but hitting tab to go into edit mode, making sure your floor is selected. You unwrap, and then let's select the floor texture. All right, so here, since it's a seamless texture, again, you could scale this up, make the floor smaller, make them bigger, flip them around, etc. Let me go into camera view, see how this looks. They're looking a little bit big for me, so what I'm going to do is just scale this up just a little bit. Something like that. Looks good to me. All right, cool. Now, back into the node editor. I'm going to hit tab to go into object mode. Node editor. I'm also going to save this quickly, just in case. Control S, save. I'm going to go to the rendered viewport just so you can see what's happening. And right now we have the image texture of the floor. Now, this is usually what people do. They just slap on an image texture and call it done. However, it looks okay, but at the same time, it looks absolutely terrible. The reason being is that the shininess or the glossiness of the floor is just everywhere. There's no depth to it. There's no realism to it. Not that I'm going for realism here, but there's just nothing to it. It's kind of dead. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in those 2 other image textures. Hitting Shift A, let's add a texture, image texture node. Then go to open, textures, and we're going to open the roughness texture. Make sure to change this to non-color data, as it's not a color map, but it's black and white. And what this will do is we're going to input this into the roughness node here. And what it does is, if I go to the image here, you can see that there's black and white values. Any value that is white is basically going to be shiny, and any value that is black will be not shiny. And any value in between, like gray, will be an in-between value of shiny and not shiny. So this will basically dictate what parts of the floor are shiny, or which parts of it are rough, and which parts of it are which parts of it are shiny, or which parts of it are glossy, and which parts of it are diffused or rough or not shiny. So taking the color value here, let's put this into the roughness and look at the scene on the right. You'll see it change right away. So do you see that right there? How it looks already a lot better. I mean, look at the difference between the two. First one just looks like a mirror. And this one, it gives it character to the floor and to the wood. All right, now the last texture we're going to be adding here is the normal map texture. Shift A, add texture, image texture. Let's open the normal map and change this to non-colored data. Now the normal map basically fakes the lighting of the scene, because our floor here, even though it's flat, it has bumps, crevices, and all this kind of interesting geometry. However, it's very, very small. If we were to model this on the floor, we would have to add so much geometry that would be ridiculous. So what the normal map does is it helps to fake the lighting so that it gives it the illusion that there's these bumps and crevices and all these little dings and scratches and all that, without actually adding the geometry. If we grab the color data right here and bring it into the normal map, you can see that everything goes haywire. And the reason is because we need to hit Shift A, add converter, or not converter, vector, normal map, and just pop that into there right there. And right away, when your camera angle is flush to the floor like this, you don't really see it. But especially if you're more at a top angle, you could see that this is with it, without it. And you will see a slight like it gives it the illusion that there's bumps and crevices and all that good stuff. Now, if I'm able to get this back in here, you can increase the strength with the strength value here. Like if we bump this and exaggerate it to, let's say, like 20, you can see it looks like there's actual crevices in the floor now, and there's bumps and all that good stuff. However, it's just an illusion with the lighting. Pretty cool. So obviously we're not going to put this to 20. We want this to be very subtle. I mean, it is a wood floor, for crying out loud. So maybe even 3 is too much for me. I'm going to put it to 1.5. You can put it to whatever you want. This is your scene. All right, cool. Cool. Now, a couple more things that I want to do, or that we're going to do, because we're in this together, right? I hope so. All right, next, I'm going to hit Z. Let's go ahead and close this. I'm going to hit Z on this. Close this, merge this back by left-clicking the little corner and dragging it together. You can merge them back together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit 7 to go into top view. I want to give the illusion that there's like some kind of chandelier or big light fixture up here. So I'm going to hit Shift A, add in a UV sphere. Click on smooth shading and bring this up to about here. And this will be like kind of like a fake chandelier light type thing. Now I'm going to hit 0 to go into camera view. I'm going to go to render view. And I'm going to go to the material with the lights, with the sphere still selected. I'm going to click on new. I'm going to change this from diffuse to emission right there. So this object will basically emit light. Let's exaggerate this just to see. I'm going to change it to 10. All right, let's exaggerate it even more. Let's go with 100. Well, depending on how you want the mood of your scene to be, you could adjust this how you want. 100 is way too much for me, obviously, because everything's kind of washed out now. I'm going to maybe put it at 30. I'm going to put it at 30 for now because we're also going to add some environmental lighting. So that's going to add more lighting to the scene. Excuse me. And I'm actually going to put this 20 even. All right, 20 is good. So here you can see what it's doing. It's basically a shiny, glowing lamp sun thing. All right, cool. Our scene is looking pretty mighty fine, I might say so myself. Control S. Let's save that one more again. One more again. Next, what I'm gonna do. Let's you know what? Let's do the Lego part. Because I'm sure you guys are all waiting for that. Like, Alex, for crying out loud, this is a Lego tutorial. Can we do stuff with Legos? Jeez. All right. I'm gonna save it before. Cool. I'm gonna yeah, I'll just and get out of full screen after. So for the Lego part, quite simple. What we're gonna do, and there's two ways you could do this. Well, first, let's just go ahead and do it. Let's select the bin, hit the T key, go to the physics tab right here, and click on add passive. So this is going to be a passive physics object, meaning that the active physics objects, the Lego blocks, will interact with this right here. Same thing with the lid, add passive, and the floor, add passive. There we go. So now they're all green because they're all rigid body objects. Now the Legos, what we're gonna do with the particle system, make sure all your settings are good. Seems all good to me. All right. Make sure your number is good, etc., because we're gonna be applying this pretty much and we're not gonna have access to it anymore. Once all that's good and dandy, what we're gonna do is and also in this scene, I mean, I think my Lego blocks are bigger than traditional Lego blocks and everything, but you know, I like to do more like cartoonish looking scenes and stuff, and I just like the feel of the big Lego blocks, sort of. I know there are big Lego blocks too anyways, so it doesn't really matter. But anyways, I kind of like the feel for it. So you can make them smaller if you want. It's all up to you. This is your scene. What we're going to do now is Control Shift A. And this will apply all the particle systems into individual objects. Which, yes, that's a thing. All right, now we're going to click on Add Active. So now they're all going to be active rigid body physics objects. Next, what we're going to do is select the plane that we have because the plane is still here. We're going to go ahead and delete that. So X, delete. Now hitting the Shift left arrow to go back to frame 1 on your timeline. Go ahead, and what's going to happen is, because with the particle systems, these were all intersecting with one another. Now that they're rigid body physics, you can see by they're all green. Now that they're rigid body physics, rigid bodies, unless you make it, they don't really they interact with one another, but they don't intersect because now they're acting like real world physical objects. So they're kind of all gonna bounce off of each other. And let's just go ahead and do it. Shift left arrow, Alt A. You can see that they all kind of explode like that. And this one is really exploding quite a lot. even more than the other scene I did, which is pretty dramatic. So what I'm going to do, the reason they're exploding that much is because they're actually they're intersecting with one another way too much. So what I'm going to do is hit Control Z. I'm going to undo all of this until I go back to my particle tab, if I can find it. There we go. So going back to this with the particle systems, So now what I'm going to do, the reason that they're shooting out so much is because they're intersecting a lot, and when you hit Alt A and they're active rigid body physics, they basically shoot out from each other because they can't be intersecting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the normal geometry to 0, which will, as you can see right here, this gives it a starting velocity for it, so it kind of helps them to shoot out. I'm going to turn it to 0. As you can see, it affects the size as well. So what I'm going to do is go down here, change the size to 0.07. And I'm also going to turn the number of Legos down a little bit. What you could do is you could either turn them down a little bit or increase the, if I go into vertex mode, you could increase the, what's it called? The surface area of where the Lego blocks are. Obviously right now there's too many Lego blocks on top of one another. Unless you want that effect where it just explodes like crazy, be my guest. But I'm going to turn this down to 250 maybe. Or shoot, let's even try 200. 200 should be good because for this surface area right here, I may only need 200. Let's try 150. Of course, if you change the size of your Lego blocks, again, I said mine are a little bit on the bigger side. You might need, you might need more if your Lego blocks are smaller. I'm just going to do 200. All right, so with that, the normal geometry at 0, etc., etc. What I'm now going to do, let me see. All right, what we're now going to do is Control Alt A. Let's try that again. Control Alt A. Apply them as individual objects, add active, and then select the plane right here, X, delete, and then shift left arrow to go back to frame 1, Alt A, and play that out, and you can see that it looks a lot better. Cool, so it looks pretty dramatic. I actually quite like it. I actually even almost like it better than the first one. The first scene that I did. Also, another thing to keep in mind that affects the... Again, you could tweak this a lot until you get the exact explosion or look you want. Another thing to keep in mind, something that will affect the rigid body physics, which you could try. If you go back and undo that until you have the plane, what you could try also is selecting the bin and the plane that we had and scaling them up to make them bigger and seeing how that plays out, because the size of the objects will definitely have the greatest and biggest impact on the rigid body physics. And one thing to keep in mind, you do not want to scale this down so much so that, it's really tiny like that, because then the rigid body physics will have trouble and not work properly because it's too small. So I rather you scale this up and make this bigger and then scale up the room to have it in correct proportion, then scale this down too small. So again, if you want less explosion, if you go back to where you have the plane and scale it up and make it bigger, it will give you less of a dramatic effect because they will be bigger, they will have more mass to them, and they won't fly out as much. However, me personally, I'm a dramatic guy. I like to have this dramatic effect. I think it looks pretty cool myself, so I'm going to leave it at that. Now, what I'm going to do, there's many ways you could do this. Like I said, you could leave these as rigid body physics if you want, but since this is going to be just a still image, what I want to do is actually I want to convert these back into individual blocks. So I'm going to hit Alt A and then pause it at a scene or a part of the animation which I like the effect. Alt A. I kind of like it here where these Lego blocks are going up and right when they're coming down. I'm going to hit Alt A, like right here. I really like that look right there. So going into top view, what I'm going to do, Z, go into wireframe. I'm going to hit B, box select all this right here. Then B, middle mouse select the lid and the box, just so that I have the Legos. And you can see that we have some casualties. Some of them are through here because they were probably spawned underneath the plane with the particle system. But with we'll delete those in a second. But with these selected, I'm going to click on Apply Transformation, which will apply the transformation of the rigid body physics. And then click on Remove, which will remove the rigid body physics of the Legos. Now, if we go back to frame 1, you can see it just stays like that, and it's just kind of frozen in time, which is fine because, again, I'm going for a still image. I'm going to select all these and just delete those. Now, another thing you could do, depending on if you want to tweak it a little bit, what you could do is just, select some different Lego blocks and hit Shift D and just copy these out, and just even go in camera view. And if you want it even more dramatic, you could copy some of these out and just rotate them how you want and kind of make your scene how you want and position them wherever you want. If you want more in the bucket, you could, grab a bunch of them, copy them, and put them in the bucket. And yeah, especially depending on where your angle's at. If your angle's at right here, you could copy a bunch of them and just throw them in the bucket, etc. And of course, you could leave this rigid body physics, but I also find that sometimes my computer runs out of memory, so I'd rather have them as objects. Cool. All right, there we go. And I'm just checking something here. Good. I just want to make sure that the view and the render was set to 1 on all of these, like I made sure before, because again, at 2, this is going to take way too much computing power. All right, let's save this as something else. File, save as, let's save it as 3. Cool, we're almost there, ladies and gentlemen, Blender Maniacs. Let's do the curtain quickly. Curtain is going to be super fast. Select the curtain. We're going to go to the cloth simulator by this little bouncy ball right here. Or not the cloth, but the physics simulator. We're going to click on cloth. Change the preset to silk. And we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Almost. If we hit Alt-A now, you can see that, well, we have to hit Shift left arrow and then Alt-A. You can see our curtain doesn't really do much. However, what we need to do is add in a wind simulator, pretty much. So hitting Shift A, add in a force field, wind. And now the arrow right here, the big arrow that you see here is the direction that the wind is going in. So I'm going to hit RY90 negative on the negative axis. I'm going to increase the strength of this to 14. And there we go. Now if we hit Alt-A, you can see we get some wind, but our curtain is falling, which is not what we want. In order to fix this, what we need to do is pin the top of this curtain. Quite simply, hit Tab to go into edit mode, Alt-right click this vertex loop, go to the vertex tab, add in a new vertex group, and click on assign. So this will assign these vertices to this group, which we will rename curtain. And now if we go to the physics tab, under pinning, enable pinning, and select the group curtain. So what this will do is it will pin these vertices, and these vertices will not be affected by the cloth simulation. But since they're connected to the other vertices, it will basically hold them in place. Shift left arrow to go back to the beginning. If we hit Alt-A, you can see we get a pretty cool thing. Now one thing we need to do, Alt-A to pause that, go to the modifiers tab. Make sure that the cloth simulation is before the subsurf modifier. So put the up arrow on that. Let's try that again. And 10 times better. Cool, so that looks really good. Make sure smooth shading is enabled. Now one slight problem that you might see, it's going into our windowsill. I mean, again, depending on where you live, that might be normal for you, but not for me. So, quick fix and solution to that. I went to Alt-Z instead of Alt-A. Pause that. Select the objects you want it to interact with. Go to the Physics tab and click on Collision. I'm going to do the same thing with the wall. Click on collision. Oh, this is a rigid body as well. We could go ahead and remove that. So right here under rigid body, you could either go on the panel here or go rigid body, remove that. And on these as well, but whatever, we'll leave it for now. I'm going to click on collision here on the wall. Now, shift left arrow to go back to beginning. Alt A. You can see that now it will not go through the windowsill and the wall or any of that, and it will work as it is. Now, strength 14 is a little too dramatic for me. I'm going to take this. Let's put it down to 10 maybe. Shift left arrow. And that's a little bit better. All right, I'm going to pause it right. I missed it. I'm going to pause it right there as that kind of wave is flowing out. Go to 0 on the numpad. I'm going to save this. Control S, save. Let's see what this looks like so far. Rendered view. That looks pretty sweet, I do say so myself. All right, the last couple of things that we're going to do. This is actually looking really cool. I love this dramatic effect of the Legos like jumping out. It looks, there's so much life to this scene. It's incredible. All right, last couple of things. We need to add the environmental lighting and then a backdrop here on the window so that it looks like there's something other than a gray world out there. And then maybe depth of field, and we're done. So let's give it another, I say 10 minutes and we'll be done. Hope you guys are enjoying it so far. For the environmental lighting, what we're going to do is go back to textures.com, my favorite website in the world. Search for tree and just scroll down. The image we're going to use is this one right here. This panoramic tree light. There's two different images. There's one that's more of like a sunrise scene, and then this one is more of like a midday scene. I took the sunrise scene because I like the feel of it better. So go ahead and download that. Once you have, go back to Blender. I'm going to save this one more again. You can't save enough times. And then going to the World tab, click on Use Nodes. Under Color, we're going to change it from Color. We're going to change it to Environment Texture. Now, what the environment, well, let me just add it and then I'll tell you what it does. Click on Open, go to Textures, and search for, I believe it's textures.com, HDR, panorama, blah, 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 sphere. All right, cool. Now if I go to the rendered viewport, you can see it's added the whole texture once it loads around the whole scene. So you might be thinking, why in the world would I want that? Well, because we only have our scene here, this actually adds a lot of realism to it for two reasons. For lighting and reflections. Because now this texture is actually giving lighting to our scene. So now it's giving all the colors that you see, it's giving those kind of lights to our scene. So it's giving like a brownish light, a greenish light, kind of like we actually had more going on in the scene than we actually do. Second thing is reflection. So the Legos, the floor, and all that is a little bit reflective. If there's nothing to reflect around the scene, it's going to look bland and boring. Like if we have just a gray background like we had before, it's just going to reflect gray and look very fake. However, now you can see on the walls right here, it's reflecting a little bit. Even on the floor, it reflects this image. So it looks like, again, there's more going on in the scene because it's very subtle, but you subtly see the reflection of the image around the scene. Also, it gives the lighting of it. So you can see the lighting is very subtle, but it's a lot better. So that's really cool. So environmental lighting is great, and it does take more computing space and memory and stuff, but if you're able to use it, it definitely adds a lot of realism. All right, next thing, we want to add a backdrop because here, although we have our environmental texture here, it still looks bad. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to use the environmental texture. We're going to be smart about it. I'm going to split this viewport once again. Go to your UV image editor. Right here, Shift A, add a mesh plane. Scale it up. Add a texture. or add a material, sorry. Change it from color. I'm going to change this to principled shader too. Why not? Change it from base color to image texture. And then just put in the HDR, the environment texture that we just used. Now going to the texture, shading, tab to go into edit mode, and you unwrap, and then just go ahead and select that texture here. Cool. Now I'm just going to scale this up just in edit mode. It doesn't really matter. SX, scale it up on the X-axis. I'm just going to hit U, project from view, and then just scale this up. It doesn't really matter if it fits. We only need it for like 1/4 of the window. If you want to scale it perfectly, that's fine. You could do that as well. Then right here, I'm going to hit RX 90 degrees. And one very important, crucial thing that you want to do is put this behind the lamp. Make sure it's completely behind this lamp right here. If it's in front of it, the sunlight will just hit this, and since this isn't actually an outdoor scene but more of a plain solid object, it'll just hit here and no longer light our scene. So make sure to put this behind the light, otherwise you're going to have trouble with your light. Hitting 0 to go to the camera view. We can now position this depending on what we see in the window. If we could position it like this, that looks really cool. We could see kind of like the floor and the trees. If you want more of a second story feel to your house, then you would more do like, you could just see the top of the trees and some of the sky. You could even do some of the sun like that, whatever. I kind of like this feel right here. Like that, like kind of like, it looks like there's a pasture and a field and some trees. I like that. It gives it an open space, I like that. All right. Let's go ahead and click on rendered. Cool. So that looks pretty cool right there. What we can do, let me see something quickly. Yeah, as you can see, if I delete that, for some reason with our plane right here, with our plane added, it's actually blocking out all the light from our sun lamp. And so if we could go ahead, actually, I'm going to leave this one in this view. In this view, I'm going to go to the 3D view. I'm going to grab the lamp. And actually I'm going to see where. So the sun lamp is kind of interesting. The way it works is it actually doesn't work based off of where it's located. You can imagine this being located infinitely everywhere at the same time. So because this plane is in the way right here, it's actually still blocking the light. So in order to fix this, we could either bring this up, I believe. Bring it up and rotate it. There we go. You have to rotate it down. So if you rotate it down, if you rotate this light, you can also hit R twice. So if you hit R twice, this will basically dictate what position in the sky the sun is in, whether it's sunrise, sunset, midday, noon, whatever. So you could get whatever kind of lighting or feel that you want in your room. You could also rotate it any degree or angle. You could see you could get some very interesting lighting effects in your room. So for me, I'm just going to leave it like that. I kind of like that look right there. But again, making sure that actually it wasn't too much the position of it right here. The position does affect it in a way. Like for example, if this is in front right here, it's going to completely block it out. Position does affect it in a way, but it seems like right here the problem was the rotation. So make sure it's rotated in a way where it's actually going into the window. Play around with it. It might be slightly different in your scene depending on how your lamp is positioned. Last thing I want to do with this right here, let me try this because it looks a little black or a little dark right there. It looks a little dark compared to how much light is coming in. I want to change this from principled shader to the emission shader actually. And I'm going to change the strength to 0.01 or maybe 1 or maybe 0.1. And then the color, I'm going to put it back to image texture. Put it back to that. And then change the strength to 1 maybe. There we go. Now it looks more like it's daylight and there's actual daylight right there, because before it was a little dark, so I'd rather put it in emission shader and put the image texture as an emission shader. So now you can kind of control how bright it is outside using this. I'm going to put it to, 0.5. No, I'm going to put it to 1. All right. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wait, did we? Yeah, we added. Last thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to select these two right here. Actually, just select them. Make this the walls material. And there we go. Now let's render out the final scene. See how it looks. I'm just going to, before I render it out, just going to give it one quick little eye over, if that's a word or if that's a thing. All right, I think it will be good. I'm going to hit Z. To render it out, go to the render layer tab. I'm going to increase the percentage to 100%. I'm going to put the sampling, render sampling to, let's do 5. I'm going to do 500 just to have a nice, clean, sharp render. And this is just going to be 1 frame, so it doesn't matter. GPU compute. I'm going to save this quickly before. File, save as. Lego Tut. I think I'm on 4 now. Save it. And then I'm just going to click on render. It's going to render one image. Click on render. I'm going to let this render out. And I will be back when it's finished rendering. So, all right. I'll be right back. All right, and there we have it. There is our scene rendered. It looks pretty sweet. I love the action that's going on here with the Legos. Looks really cool. Now, just one little quick thing that you could do. If, let's say you have fireflies in your scene, and fireflies are like little white dots and specks in your scene, what you could do is simply go over here. One of the easiest and simplest ways to get rid of that is go over here, go light paths, under filter glossy. It basically blurs the bounces or the light bounces, which will help with the fireflies. Don't put it too high, but you could try different settings, but I would put it around 2, 3, 4, or 5. And that will get rid of pretty much all your fireflies if you have any fireflies, which are the little white dots in there. But that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was quite a lengthy one, but with that, make sure to head on over to BlenderMania3D.com, and in the forums section under BlenderMania 3 tutorial finished projects or something like that, make sure to post your artwork from this tutorial. Would absolutely love to see it. So with that, thank you guys for watching. Also request a tutorial. I look forward to seeing you around, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Make sure to share this, like, and see you in the next one. All right, ciao for now. Au revoir.